Hey, what's up, Dad? This is DadComm, 21 days to a better relationship with your kid. I'm just gonna be completely honest with you. Full transparency, I'm not a great father. There's always room for improvement. I have a great relationship with my kids now, but that hasn't always been the case. Like many of you, I struggled connecting with my kids. And ironically, my job as a cop was a school resource officer where I dealt with 15,000 kids every day, where I was a trusted adult. They would tell me things that I never thought I'd have to listen to coming from somebody else's kid. But with my own kids, I struggled to make that connection. I had too much of me in my job and not enough of me at home. DadComm is designed to be a 21-day program that gives you 5 to 10 minutes of instruction, plus a practical daily challenge that allows you to exercise your communication skills to build the relationship with your child. Look, I was a hostage negotiator and I've taught all over the country and I've been involved in some pretty significant events. People are people. You just have to meet them where they are and communicate with them and build that rapport so that they trust you. Then you can influence behavior change. I can tell my kid all day long, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. But all they hear is me complaining at them. Don't do that. But now what I have is the opportunity to actually pour into them to give them the wisdom that comes from my training and experience that they can apply in their daily lives and go out and be successful members of society. And you can do the same thing. It just takes effort. It doesn't matter if your kid is a toddler or a little baby or a 45 to 55-year-old man or woman. You can start right now and make a difference. And all you have to do is be honest, open, and willing to make a change. It's on you. It is your decision to make that change. And you can either make it or not. But don't say I didn't warn you. What do you have to lose? During our pre-launch for this course, which is right now, for $35, you get access to the DadComm 21 Days to a Better Relationship with Your Kids. You get access to our private Facebook group for dads to communicate with other dads and share struggles and successes and learn from one another and really build this community. You get updates for merchandise when that launches for the Dad Taskforce, which is a podcast that you can find on Apple and Spotify. You get the free ebook, DadComm 21 Days to a Better Relationship with Your Kid. It's going on sale today on Amazon for $20. So for $35 in the pre-launch, you get course access, private Facebook group, early launch information on merchandise for the Dad Taskforce. You get the free ebook for the same course, and not only that, you also get the free self-awareness, self-control ebook and video course, which shouldn't take you more than 10 minutes to get through. I promise you that. You have the rest of your life to be a father. What are you waiting for? Hey, welcome to the Dad Task Force. Today we've got an incredible guest, and I'm not really sure why he said yes to this, but I'm glad he did. And I'm going to do my best to introduce him in a way that makes sense, and that and he can by all means correct me if I'm wrong. But today we have Dean Stott. Now, Dean is or was, after 16 years in the British Army as a Special Forces operator with the SBS. He's a 2-time world record breaker for riding a bicycle 14,000 miles up the Pan American Highway in 99 days. So the fastest to ever do it and the first to do it under 100 days. He is the author of Relentless, From Special Operations to World Record Breaker, and he is a very highly sought after security professional with expertise in evacuations. He's a television star with SAS Australia, and he is the host of Netflix's Toughest Forces on Earth, and what we just talked about for the pregame
was that he has his own action figure. Now that's, I mean, as a kid, I think that'd be pretty cool if my dad had an action figure.
Right.
But he's married and has, I think, 3 kids. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
All right, Dean, welcome to the show. Thank you for giving us your time. We really value this interaction. So
no, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So I was telling Davon and you at the beginning, I was listening to Jocko because you were on his show twice.
Yeah.
And in the first one, you really talked about how you're a military kid. Your dad was a sergeant major. Is that correct?
That was it. Yeah. Sergeant major. Yeah.
And then do you just want to start there? Kind of give us the details of your life and that experience.
Yeah. So as you touched on, I was born into that military environment. We call them pads brats back in the UK. That's the terminology. Pad is a house, and we're known as the house brats. So yeah, my dad, he was in the Royal Engineers, but his military career wasn't the one that I really took on myself. He was I like to call him like the Ted Lasso of the military. He was the Army soccer manager, player, and coach. So he was a semi-professional, professional footballer. Had an injury back in the 60s, which ended his career. Nowadays, he'll probably get surgery and be back on the pitch within a couple of months. So he went and joined the military. And the military, for those, you can either have a military career, like a combat career and special forces, or if you are into sport, it is a platform as well as a second opportunity. There was a lot of people, professional boxers, professional soccer players, rugby players come from the military. So that was a path my father took. So because he was sports orientated, I didn't really, although the path that I eventually took, I didn't really understand much about the military. I was immersed in it. We grew up in Aldershot, which is the home of the British Army, which is where the airborne are. So it wasn't strange to see guys falling out the sky, landing in the school playground and things like that. But it wasn't something I wanted to pursue. I actually always wanted to be a fireman as a young boy.
We won't hold that against you. Nothing wrong with that. So how was it growing up in that experience, in that environment? So you're talking about, the airborne culture, the military brat culture. I know that you had a moment in time where you actually had to make a decision as to whether you were going to live with your dad or your mom.
Yeah, so being a pads brat, I don't know what's the same in the US. We used to have to move every 3 years. My father would get a posting, and then by the time you're getting settled down, you're up sticks and you're off again. So you didn't really form any strong friendships there because you had to move. So my sister was born in Germany. We came back to UK at the age of 8. My mum grabbed me and my sisters one morning. It was actually New Year's Day, 1985. I remember it because it was my dad's birthday's New Year's Eve, and I remember she sneaked us through the house. There was blood all over the walls. There was false teeth in the fireplace, and I'm trying to work out what's going on. And she took us on a train back to Manchester, where she was from. And when we got there, she told me that she'd left my father. And to get onto the housing market, you had to be homeless. And so we ended up in a homeless home in Moss Side in Manchester. And Moss Side in the middle of the 80s was the most dangerous place in the UK. So me and my sisters were the only Caucasian kids in the school. And so from a young age, I was fighting. I was scrapping in that playground. A lot was going on in my head. I was very close to my father. My father would travel every other weekend, 240 miles, come pick me and my sisters up and take us back down south, which was a bit of respite for me. That time I could be just a normal kid before I went back to Manchester, and then I was just scrapping again. The 2 years later, it went to court. It went to head, and the judge was like, I'm not going to split up these siblings. They make the decision, not me. Which I think is it's good. But when the siblings, me being age 10 and being the oldest, I had to make the decision for me and my 2 sisters, and I was very close to my father. And so I said my father, which now when I look back, the amount of pressure that was put on me then and that decision and the repercussions that would have had for my mother, etc. Anyway, my father got custody and we moved back down to Aldershot. And my father then, and that was when, that sort of period was when I could just be a normal kid again. I could relax. My father had done his 22 years. He'd retired in the military. And we moved to a little village right in the middle of the countryside. I mean, I started school, my high school, and then that was it. It was almost that was in the past, and I had a new life.
Is there do you have any particular reasons as to why you went with your dad instead of your mom? And I asked that because it is fairly it's not common for kids to go with the parent, like the father figure. I know you mentioned that on the other one, but that nothing has really changed. It's still very difficult, especially in certain states, for the parent or the father to get custody.
I think at the time I had a natural bond towards my father anyway. You know, my mother was struggling financially. We're in a homeless home. You know, I'm fighting. When I go back down south, my dad takes us to theme parks. We go to the beach. You know, it's almost like two different worlds completely. So that was what was attracted to me. It was like, I can carry on fighting and scrapping up there and struggle by, or I have the option of living with my father. And so I took that decision. And I have two younger sisters. One's a year younger than me and the other 4 years. The one who was only a year younger, she was closer to my mum. You know, even still to this day, it gets brought up. But for me, I think I made the right decision, not just for myself, but for the three of us.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So you get through high school, you go into the military, you spend 16 years doing high speed, low drag stuff, probably a pretty high op tempo. Yeah.
Well, I know, as I said, I wanted to be a fireman, and I finished high school in 1993 at the age of 16. And it's very different from here. You have high school, and then we have college, and then we have university. My father, being a start, made it very strict. You know, I made sure I did my homework. He wanted to make sure academically I was more clever to choose jobs rather than going on the physical attributes. And I had no physical attributes at that time. You know, I was about 5'7" and weighed about 130 pounds. But I'd been surfing all my life. I loved surfing, and I went to college. I wasn't really interested in it. And I went on a 2-week surfing holiday with my pals, and it ended up being 6 months. And then long before the mobile phone, my father came looking for me. I'd given up college and was working in a surf shop. And so he came and found me and told me, very abruptly told me I'd wasted my education and my life. What was I going to do to turn it around? And back in 1993, 94, it was a recession. There was about 2,000 jobs for one fireman in Surrey where we lived. And so I knew that, with my limited experience in life, that wasn't going to be enough. But I thought, well, if I joined the military, it'd be great for my resume, do 3 years there, and that would help join the fire brigade. So that's what I did. I told my father I'd join the military, and he told me I'd last 2 minutes, which I think now is reverse psychology, but I just use that as fuel in my belly. As I always say, you can argue with someone till you're blue in the face. Over something you're disagreeing with. The best course of action was action itself. And so that's what I did. I mean, on the Monday morning, I walked into the careers office. My father saw me do it. And from that point on, he was then supportive of it, and gave me direction.
That's awesome. And 16 years in, and then I'm not trying to fast track it too much.
No. That's cool.
Make sure we got time.
Yeah.
And what happened? How did your military career end?
Yeah, my military career was great. I thought I was going to be in for 3 years, fell in love with it. Didn't really have any aspirations of special forces when I joined. It was just naturally where my career took me. I went commando, I went airborne, diver reconnaissance, and then all my friends were going tier 1 special forces. And so it was the natural path for me. And so, very fortunate to become one of the first Army candidates to join the SBS. And so I never had any aspirations of leaving. As you touched on, I did 16 years. If I had a parachuting accident, and if it wasn't for that accident, I would still be in the special forces now. I had no aspirations of leaving at all. But I did. I had a hey-ho parachuting accident, actually on the exit, not on the landing. I got my leg caught in the line above my head. Just a freak accident, pulled my leg over and to the right. So I tore my ACL, my MCL, my lateral meniscus in my knee, my hamstring, my calf, and my quadricep. So all the supporting muscles as well. So 16 years in the military. And then as a young boy in the military environment, all I knew was that. I mean, I was sort of told, thank you for your time. It's time to leave. And that was a huge change in my life. But fortunately for me, I'd met my wife about 18 months, maybe a year actually, just before I left. And that was critical in my transition, having my wife by my side, because she's very, very entrepreneurial, understands the civilian sector a lot better than I did.
Yeah. So once you get out, you start your security firm. Is that correct?
Yeah, my wife, without sounding like Liam Neeson, people with our skill sets, tend to work in the security industry. And my wife, she was a bank manager at the time. She also did her close protection, did her surveillance. So our vision was to be working together in the security industry. I mean, she got pregnant with our first daughter, but she set up our first company on a BlackBerry, watching TV. She knew, how to set up companies, how to run companies. And so, yeah, that was it. We set one up. And within 48 hours of me leaving the military, sort of to add to it as well, I was under a lot of pressure because my wife was 8 months pregnant. I didn't know there was going to be any work there. I got to where I had, because of my physical attributes, I couldn't even now run 100 meters. So there was a lot of things playing in my mind. I was going through, Davon, is it? Davon.
Yeah.
Yeah, Davon will understand this. There's a lot of synergies between special forces and professional sports people. You spend your life trying to be the best in the field, and then where early retirement, whether it's through injury, which you have an identity crisis. What is my role? You knew what you were doing day in, day out when you're training for that football team. I knew what I was day in, day out in the special forces. To now, where do I fit in society? What's my next evolution in life, which I call it? So that was an evolution in life. What's my next evolution in life? So I had all that going on. But as I said, within 48 hours, I was in Libya during the Arab Spring in May 2011, helping set up the British Embassy in Benghazi, one of their projects. And I was keen to find a niche within the industry. I just didn't want to be doing what all my other friends were doing. A lot of my friends were doing maritime security. A lot were working in the oil and gas. And these Libyans sort of identified they didn't want it being another Afghan in Iraq when Gaddafi had fallen. But these large, and I always call them the big five, these large security companies were charging 6-7 figure sums for crisis management and evacuation plans without there being anything in place. And so that's what I did. I spoke to my wife. There was a huge proliferation of weapons at the time. And I bought 30 weapons on the black market, and I buried them between Tunis and Egypt, and spent a month in the desert designing my own evacuation plans, and sold that to the oil and gas sector. So that was the start of my sort of line of work with regards evacuations.
That's resourceful, I guess. I don't even know, like I wouldn't know how to do any of that. So yeah.
But we learn it in the military. We learn it in the military, so it's just literally, civilianizing it. Everyone thinks as well, the security industry is very diverse. When they look at you with your bald head and your tattoos and your muscles, they think you're a doorman from the local nightclub. Security industry is everything from surveillance, close protection, maritime security, cyber security. It's this huge, huge industry. And so, although those weapons were buried there, again, very fortunate. My wife was my business partner with me as well. So she was coordinating the jobs that were coming in. But I was working ad hoc, which meant I could, I wasn't working for a particular client or company. Every time I got a phone call, it was a different country. It was a different task. And I'd learned a lot from my time in the military, but I only saw what the military showed me. I didn't see outside those walls. And what I was now doing with the security industry, I was flying all over the world, learning about this whole security sector and understanding, more about the demographics, the politics, and the tribal influences in this area. So really, in a short period of time, of a few years, I gathered so much information and also built up a great network as well of people to work with around the world.
So from your military background into the security realm, and then you decide, one day you wake up and you're like, you know what, I'm going to ride a bike.
Yeah, there was a bit before that. This is called Dad Taskforce. I'll explain where my errors are in my way. I got it's in, when was it now? So in July 2014, I was in Brazil covering the World Cup, and the year before, 2 years before, I'd I was in London Olympics doing the Olympics. I mean, I was in Benghazi when your American ambassador got killed. I think did a movie called 36 Hours. Because of that, I had to evacuate an oil company from Benghazi to Tripoli. And because of the success of that, 2 years later, when I'm in Brazil, I get a phone call from the Canadian embassy saying that they're stuck in Libya, the Tripoli war. And my name kept coming up. So I went back in and I helped coordinate, and we single-handedly evacuated the Canadian embassy, 18 military and 4 diplomats. And the reason I mention that is I came back from that trip, and my wife, my normal SOP is I charge my phone, launder my kit, and get ready for the next phone call. My wife sat me down at the table with 2 bottles of wine, red wine, so I knew it was serious. And we just drank it. And she highlighted I'd only been home 21 days in a 365-day calendar. So for me, I was trying to match the adrenaline rush I had when I was in the special forces, where I actually come to terms with the fact that I'd left mentally. That was good for me to be keeping busy. And, we had a young daughter, and you're only home 21 days. So we totally got the balance wrong, the yin and yang. The chapter 16 in my book is called Dead or Divorced. That was a conversation me and my wife were having at the time. If I continued at this tempo and taking these risks, I would either be dead or divorced. And it actually was just a lack of communication. I misunderstood. I thought my wife wanted me to be going out to work because she controls all the business, the funds, controls everything. And I think she thought I wanted to be away, and that wasn't the case. And so we then decided, right, enough's enough. And I took a sabbatical from the security industry. My wife also had a property development company. And so I joined her in that. And you can imagine, and I'm sat there with my backstory with these architects and plumbers, and I'm not really interested in anything you guys are saying. And so my wife could see that glaze over my eyes, and she said, you need to do something to keep physically, mentally engaged. And so this was 5 years after the parachute injury. My leg now was 2 kilos or 5 pounds lighter than my good leg because of the muscle wastage. And so I just bought a road bike off Amazon, just cycled to and from the office. It was only about 8 miles there and back. But being cardiovascular, getting that cardiovascular lungs going again, I felt like there was, I felt a huge weight off my shoulders at the time. And so I said to her, well, I fancy doing a world record. I've always, ever since a young boy, I'd always been intrigued with the Guinness Book of Records. And, maybe I should have ate 12 Ferrero Rochers in a minute or something. But my wife, in fact, she said, what do you think you're doing? I said, well, cycling's good because it wasn't hurting my knee. It wasn't a sport, or it was having impact. And she found the world's longest road, which runs from southern Argentina to northern Alaska. So I joked that she wanted me out of the house at this time. And it runs 14,000 miles, as you said, 2 continents, 14 countries. And I'd only ever cycled 20 miles. And I said, yeah, let's do it. So I applied for the world record. Sounds quite arrogant, but I knew mentally and physically I had the endurance, and mentally from the stuff I'd done in the special forces and the security industry, I just needed to apply that to a new sport. I mean, Guinness came back 6 weeks later and said, you've been successful on your application. And that was the start of the training and the planning for that task.
Not to overshadow that, so it's pretty incredible, your op tempo on that. What as a dad now, how was you have 2 kids at this point, right?
My son was born now at this point. Yeah, my son was born. Yeah.
How are you balancing essentially a significant journey and dad time stuff?
Yeah, I would be lying to say that I balanced it well. I'm very fortunate compared to maybe most dads. I have a very, very, very understanding wife who literally does everything. She plans, coordinates the operations. She helps with the planning of this, the fundraising of this. And I think it's because we do it together. I'm not doing it on my own, and it's not Dean, it's not Alana's, it's Dean and Alana. Everything's Dean and Alana. So that helps as well, because I do feel that, in some relationships, and it tends to be the wife that has to put their career or dreams on pause so they can start a family. And then the husband just carries on. He's doing what he wants to do, and there can be resentment in there. So what we've managed to do is really balance that. We understand our strengths and weaknesses. Alana can't cycle 14,000 miles. I can. I can't raise $1.4 million for charity, but Alana can. And so we do everything together. So when I guest speak, I do say that anyone can break a world record if you have someone planning it, looking after the business, doing the mortgage and the kids. And so I don't think it's something that I've mastered. I think I'm just very lucky that I have a wife who's my business partner and best friend, and does everything with me.
This episode is brought to you by StreamKits at StreamKits.com. If you're into content creation, whether you're a streamer, a podcaster, an influencer, or you have a more traditional production need for your content, StreamKits has you covered. From the solo IRL backpack man on the street interview kit, all the way up to a more studio quality 4-camera, 4-audio, stable mount system, they have what you're looking for. Look, in the last year, I filmed plenty of training content for some pretty big clients, and what I started off with was my phone. Then I upgraded to a fancy DSLR, but I had to buy tripods, I had to buy lenses, I had to buy audio interfaces and microphones, and as the camera upgrade or the phone upgrades, now I've got to buy different interfaces so that audio continues to work, and it just keeps draining the bank account for equipment just to put the content out. Now, with StreamKits, you get everything that you need in every package. And you get a camera, you get a couple of lenses, you get the mounting equipment, you get the audio interface, unless you choose not to get the audio interface, and you get high quality production level equipment that's super affordable to allow you to start streaming your content today. Now let's just put it into perspective. The most expensive kit on their website is 4 cameras, 4 microphones, 4 headsets, all of the interface stuff that all comes together and comes out one USB cord into your computer. $4,199. Go to Amazon and get a dual camera entry-level streaming setup. You're gonna look at about $4,500. Do the math. And it gets better. If you want a 3-camera entry-level broadcasting system for your production quality, $15,000. But StreamKits is a third of that price with 4 cameras, 4 microphones, 4 headsets, all the stuff you need to put it together to make it look cool, and then get you on the road to streaming today. Those other systems are great. They probably work really well, but you have to have a learning curve to understand how to use the camera, how to set it up, how to manage lighting, how to manage the data transfer, how to get everything to interoperate and connect so that it shows up on your computer. That takes time. The more time it takes to learn these things, the less time you have to actually put your content out, which then is affecting your bottom line, because now you're not making money on your content because you're stuck at the very beginning trying to get ready to run the race. StreamKit systems offer a simple plug-and-play design that shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes to put together and get going. And with discount code Taskforce15, you get an additional 15% off of production quality equipment that's so easy to use because it's plug-and-play that you can start sharing your content with the rest of us right now. So go to StreamKits.com and enter Taskforce15 at checkout.
I think it's really important to have that kind of support network in the background. So you land in Alaska, not to again, I don't want to be. I want to get to dad stuff, so I'm going to cover the highlights. You get to Alaska, your family's waiting on you, and then you're off to an event. And what's next in the life of the Stott household? What happens next?
Yeah, it's difficult because when you come back from something like that, first thing people say, what next? It's like, well, just let me settle down with my family. But me being me, I like to have something to aim for. One of the things we never did, Alana and I, which we do now more, is appreciate the moment and celebrate our successes. We don't really do that. We raised $1.4 million, smashed 2-wheel records, and it's like, what next? We're already looking for the next high. But for us, it was up until then, I was flying under the radar. No one knew who Dean Stott was. I didn't realize that the bike ride would then bring book opportunities, TV opportunities, and such. But actually, the security is always where it comes back to. No matter what you do, Will Records TV, you are the security guru. So people were still reaching out. So that was where where I sort of stayed. That was almost my path. I've never come off that path. More recently, I evacuated 220 Americans out of Israel within 36 hours of the Hamas. And everyone was like, "Oh, you're in the security industry again." I said, "I never left. I never have left. I've always been there." So whatever I do, whether it's Netflix, books, or Will Records, that's always been the path that I come back to. It's always the stability.
How was it that so your book is very much on your pursuit of excellence, right? So how are you passing that down to your children?
Yeah, it's really hard because I do worry for my kids because not just myself. My wife's a very much an overachiever. She works in human trafficking. Last year, she got awarded the MBE from King Charles for her services to that. She has her own books as well. I've just been awarded the MBE this year from King Charles for services to sport and humanitarian. So I do worry that, the reason we're doing it is not because we want our kids to match what we're doing. We want to just give our kids a better life. My son hasn't even watched Netflix. I actually did Netflix because my kids didn't even believe I was in the military. I think they thought I was stolen valor. You know what I mean? So, and I love it. I love their innocence. Our neighbor actually, he grabbed me a couple of months ago when we came here, and his son and my son have been playing. He goes, "What is it you do, Dean?" I sort of went into a couple of the things, and I gave him a book. And he said, "Oh, because Tommy tells us you work in Burger King." I'm like, love it. I did when I was 14, and I've told him everything else I've done since, but that's the one thing that sticks in his mind. And so for me, it's not really putting that unrelenting pursuit of excellence onto them. For us, it's all about manners and chivalry. And whatever they decide to do in the future, that they do. I'm not going to push a sport on them. I know a lot of kids here now already into sport at an early age, and my son's still not really interested. But I also understand that a lot of kids tend to fall out of love with the sport as well. And so for us, it's really just let them go on their own path, as long as you can provide some stability for them. They're very lucky that they have, successful parents, but I don't ever wish for them. My son wants to be a zookeeper, now wants to be a photographer. I'm like, brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah.
And if I can help him in any way I can. And so I sort of, just let them do theirs rather than force it upon them.
Does he want, is it still photography or like videography?
He hasn't mentioned, just photography. It changes. He wanted to be a guitar playing zookeeper, and now it's photographer. I do ask now and then, do you want to be in the army? He's like, "Oh no, you die." He thinks everyone dies. And so I was like, okay. But that'll probably change.
Yeah, for sure. Do they go on set with you when you do your Netflix stuff?
No, the Netflix was 8 countries around the world. It was about 10 to 14 days filming in each. So no, that they never. We strange enough, my third daughter was born 12 hours before I had to fly off and do the very first episode. So things still haven't changed, even though I'm out in the military. We were still getting pulled apart. But no, they've not been on set. My daughter's watched 6 of the 8 episodes with me, and my son, he's just not interested.
So the reason I was asking is because we just launched through the website, thetacticaltalker.com. It's a training platform for dads to better communicate with their kids, right?
Yeah.
One of the ideas I've been kicking back and forth for advertisement is you see a lot of guys go out and do the tactical stuff. They've got their homemade kit on that they bought off Amazon, and they've got their SBRs and all of their pistols and stuff and there is a need for that kind of like skill set and proficiency. Mm-hmm. But when you ask them, what are you doing this for? It's like, so I can keep my kids safe. And I think that from an intelligence perspective, when you look at it in terms of data sets and trends, the biggest thing that a dad can do to keep their kids safe is to do one, what you're talking about is like you're creating stability. But the second is to let them come in and have a spot where they can bounce ideas off of a trusted adult like dad. If I spend all the time at the range, my kids never see me, and all they know is, well, dad can shoot. Yeah. Like how do they know the dad can handle the other stuff? So that the idea for the ad was like, you're doing a great job, but we could do better.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, like, what advice would you give a man to better equip themselves to just be engaged with their kids?
For me, and I was absent in this for a long time, was just be present, just listen, and get down, in the past, I said, because I've been so busy, life's so busy that I come back, me and my wife are working from home, and the kids always end up being second place. So for us, we've now, like I say, we've got the balance wrong before, we've got it wrong before. Now it's work is work, home is home. Even if we work from home, but just being present, they know what it's like. My daughter, my 2-year-old daughter, she just gets the phone and throws it. She knows what the phone is. It's a distraction. So we don't have mobile phones in the communal areas in the house because that is time for you and your kids. And so for me, it's trying to eliminate any distractions and just be present and just listen to them. Kids, my son's 8. He's like a fantasist. His stories just go everywhere. So, don't challenge some of his questions. I mean, your original question, whether he wants still photography or videography, he said he wants to we do these family photos down at the beach. If he wants to do that, I want to do family photos. So that's obviously still. But yeah, just be present is all I would say.
Okay. Davon, do you have any questions? Like
I've got a question, just because you and your wife are so successful. You've obviously got this huge, awesome stories. Your son's 8 now. Do you feel like people have like higher expectations for your son because of who you are? And I guess if they do, like, how do you manage that?
If people do, they do. No one said that to me. I've been very vocal in the fact that, I don't want, as a young boy, I wanted to impress my father. I mean, even when I joined the military, everything I did was to try and impress my father and win his respect. Because my father was very stoic, old school sergeant major. Never said that he loved you. Didn't show any emotion. He didn't have a great upbringing either, or much of a family. And so for me, I like to change. Just because my father was like that with me doesn't mean I need to be like that with my son. And so I just want to set an environment and my son doesn't feel like he needs to impress me or put pressure on him. If other people have that, then they can. But within this household, that pressure isn't on our children at all.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I agree.
How old's your oldest daughter now?
So she's 13, Tommy's 8, and Harley will be 2 in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, so we both have daughters. My son is the same age, and we both have sons. My son's the same age as his daughter, and then I've got an older one that's 17 and 15. So yeah, your skill set's going to come in handy as they get older. So
yeah. Well, every time my daughter mentions boys, I just I'd say I'll give them a book. But, yeah, I saw Joe. I think they will do. I'm very fortunate. I get sponsored by likes of Leopold, Staccato, the gun brands, but I just don't take my son yet. He just doesn't like it, and so. But I know that when he comes to me and he says, "I want to go shooting," I know he'll have a genuine interest in it. Yeah. And so for me, as long as I can stay fit, and then anything he wants to do, we'll or Molly as well and Harley. That we'll do together. My wife gets upset because normally when I put my hand to it, I'm quite good at it, even if it's a new thing. So one of the things we want to do together as a family, we've never done it before. None of us have done it before, so we have no baselines. Horse riding. Try and find something that is new to us all, rather than dad can do this or mum can do this. Something that none of you have tried before. So we're looking into that. And America offers so many other things and experiences that we didn't have in the UK, and that was one of the reasons for coming as well, as for the kids.
Yeah, I mean, that you're not wrong. We live in a small town out here that they still ride horses up and down Main Street.
I love it.
So I think it's an awesome hobby. You said that he wanted to be into videography. One of our sponsors actually gives it was designed by a guy in production for his kids, where it's a small camera about like this big, smaller than a cell phone, and it comes with a tablet and a backpack, and his kids walk around and like film crazy stuff, super high definition, high quality camera stuff that I was just gonna, and he would love you. Just, but
set Tommy off on his career.
Yeah. Hey, Dean, I really appreciate it. I know that they can find you on Instagram at Dean Stott, and then online at deanstott.com. Is there anything else that you want to push, promote, or advertise?
No, you've done my book, for me, hopefully there's some unique message in there for some of the dads, there's no guidebook out there about what's right, what's wrong. You just, I get it wrong, everyone gets it wrong. So yeah, just go with it.
Yeah, for
sure. For me, I always like to break the pattern. For me, growing up, I knew what the good things I liked from my father and the bad things, and just make sure I didn't obviously instill that moving forward. And I give a good example of a good friend of mine. Actually, his father was a pastor back in UK, and he'd have to make an appointment to see his dad 1 hour a week. So that relationship was very, very difficult. But I see him with his kids, his son and daughter, and I've never known anyone show so much love. And so I always say that just because that was the way you were brought up doesn't mean you have to continue that. Just take the good and the bad.
For sure. Devon?
No, that's awesome advice. I just actually started listening to your book, and so I'm excited to get through it. And I read the whole the intro and everything, and
cool.
Big promotion from Jocko, which is awesome. And it seems like you've been through a lot, and I'd encourage other people to read that book too. So.
Thank you, appreciate it.
For sure. All right, I appreciate your time. I'm gonna say thank you, and then we'll see you next time.
Definitely. Come back. I'll be back. No problems. Especially when they're a little bit older as well. Lessons learned. Excellent. Right. Cheers. Take care.
Yeah.